The air in the auditorium was thick with the scent of starched uniforms and self-congratulation. I stood in the back, a ghost in the architecture of my own success, watching my ex-husband, Mark, a man who wore his ambition like a second uniform. He was seated in the front row, soaking in the adulation. Beside him sat his father, General Thompson, a retired officer who saw the military not as a service, but as his family's personal legacy. The four-star general at the podium was reading the final lines of the commendation, lauding Mark's supposed heroics during Operation Nightfall. Every word was a carefully crafted lie, a lie I knew intimately because I had written the truth it was designed to cover. The general concluded the citation. "Due to the highly classified nature of Operation Nightfall," he announced, his voice echoing through the hall, "the supporting intelligence officer's record was wiped clean for national security purposes." I saw General Thompson give a smug, knowing nod. My erasure was now a matter of public record, a footnote to his son's glory. The polite applause began, but the speaker held up a hand. He cleared his throat, a sharp, deliberate sound that cut through the noise. "However," he continued, a ripple of confusion spreading through the room, "a recent declassification review has brought the full operational file to light. The board has moved to issue a correction." He looked down at his notes, then stared directly out into the audience, his eyes searching the back of the room. He found me. "Will Captain Lena Petrova please come forward?" The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. A year earlier, in a sterile conference room that smelled of stale coffee and defeat. It was our divorce mediation. General Thompson was there, not as a father-in-law, but as Mark's career advisor. He slid a non-disclosure agreement across the polished table, the paper feeling heavy, final. "Lena, your signature here is a formality," he said, his voice a smooth, condescending blade. "It ensures the operational details of Nightfall remain streamlined." I remember looking at Mark, pleading with my eyes for him to say something, anything. He just stared at the table, studying its wood grain as if it held the secrets of the universe. "For the good of the service," the general continued, "Mark's field actions will be the primary focus of the after-action reports. Your role was support. We need the record to reflect that to avoid any command-level confusion for his next promotion. He was stealing my career right in front of me, and my own husband was his silent, willing accomplice. I saw all the years of my work propping him up, the late nights I spent analyzing data while he took the credit. It all culminated in this single, humiliating moment. This was not a request. It was an erasure. He called it streamlining the narrative, a clean, simple story for the promotion board. But I was the author of that victory, and he was trying to delete my name from the book. To understand the reckoning that was about to unfold, you have to understand the two lives they forced me to live. To really understand the life I was living, you have to picture a Sunday dinner at the Thompson house. It was their weekly ritual, a command performance where my ex-father-in-law, General Thompson, a man who saw the military as his personal kingdom and his son as the crown prince, would hold court. The air was always thick with the smell of roast beef and the weight of his expectations. He'd sit at the head of the table, a throne of polished oak, and regale his audience with tales of my ex-husband's supposed heroics. My ex-husband, Mark, a charismatic but deeply insecure officer, would just sit there, soaking in the praise he so desperately craved. He wore his father's approval like a medal he hadn't earned. On this particular evening, the general was deep into a story about Operation Nightfall. He was animated, his voice booming as he described how Mark had sensed a trap, a gut feeling that saved his entire team from an ambush. I just sat there, stirring my mashed potatoes, my stomach churning. His gut feeling. That was my analysis. Those were my hours spent staring at data streams, my painstaking work connecting disparate pieces of intelligence that pointed to a hidden threat. I saw the all-nighters I pulled, the meals I skipped, the social events I missed, all of it repackaged as his battlefield intuition. When a cousin naively asked what I did, the general cut in with a hearty laugh. "Lena keeps the computers running." He'd bellow, "Every field officer needs a good admin, right?" The table would chuckle, and I'd just smile, a hollow, practiced expression that didn't betray the cold fury coiling in my gut. I was a ghost at their table, a silent partner in my own erasure. Now let me show you my reality, the world that existed beyond their polished dining room. Picture a windowless room, bathed in the sterile blue-white glow of computer screens. This was the SCIF, the sensitive, compartmented information facility where I spent most of my life. There were no grand stories here, no booming laughter, just the low hum of servers and the quiet, intense focus of people whose work would never be acknowledged. I was the lead analyst for Nightfall, and on the night of the ambush, I wasn't just running the computers. I was running the entire intelligence side of the operation. My direct commander, Colonel Rostova, a sharp, no-nonsense officer who saw right through. The military's political games stood behind me, her presence a silent show of support. I remember staring at the screens, my eyes scanning lines of code and satellite imagery. "I've got a ghost signal piggybacking on the G2 frequency," I said, my voice calm, betraying none of the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Cross-referencing with the SIGINT from the drone feed. "It's a decoy. The real target is here." My fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up a new set of coordinates. My analysis showed a heavily armed enemy force lying in wait, a trap that would have wiped out Mark's entire team. It wasn't a gut feeling. It was a mathematical certainty. It was my work. My calm, precise analysis prevented a catastrophe, a fact that would never be mentioned at a Thompson family dinner. Colonel Rostova saw it, though. She saw my brilliance, and I could see the frustration in her eyes, the quiet fury at the old boys. Club that would inevitably give the credit to the man in the field, not the woman in the chair. Later that week, I tried to confront Mark. I found him in his study, polishing his boots for the next day. I kept my voice even, my tone measured. "Your father is telling people you sniffed out the trap," I began. "Mark, my analysis saved your team." He didn't even look at me. He just kept working the polish into the leather, his movements precise, almost robotic. "Lena," he said, his voice tight with irritation, "it's just a story for him. You're making this too complicated." He finally looked up, his eyes a mixture of guilt and defiance. "The mission was a success, that's all that matters. Don't rock the boat." Don't rock the boat. I just stood there, speechless. I saw it all so clearly then. My ambition was a threat to his insecurity. My competence was a complication to his narrative. I was the boat, and he was asking me to sink myself to keep his world calm and orderly. I had spent years of my life making myself smaller, quieter, less visible, all to protect his fragile ego. I thought of all the times I had downplayed my successes, all the times I had let him take the credit, all the times I had swallowed my pride for the sake of his career. I saw 10 years of "we're a team" played out in a single, selfish moment. And in that moment, I knew I was done. I was done being the silent partner in his success. I was done being the ghost in my own life. For years, I had tried to play by their rules, hoping my work would speak for itself. But after that mediation, I realized they only respected one thing: the system. So, I decided I would finally use the system to speak for me. After that conversation with Mark, something inside me shifted. The hurt didn't vanish, but it cooled. It hardened into something sharp, clear, and intensely focused. I realized that arguing with them was like trying to reason with a hurricane, a pointless, exhausting exercise. They didn't operate on fairness or logic. They operated on power and narrative. So I stopped trying to appeal to their emotions, and instead began to dismantle their story, piece by procedural piece. My goal wasn't messy, emotional revenge. It was the immutable establishment of fact. My nights changed. Instead of tossing and turning with resentment, I spent my time in the digital archives, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for a weapon. I found it in a little-known clause in the Armed Services Charter, a dusty, overlooked rule that allowed for a post-mission record correction if new material evidence came to light. It was a loophole designed for extraordinary circumstances, and I knew my situation qualified. The system they had used to bury me would be the exact same system I would use to excavate the truth. I began compiling my case with the same meticulous care I used for mission analysis. The evidence was overwhelming, a digital trail they never imagined I would have the discipline to follow. I gathered the time-stamped server logs showing my command inputs. I pulled the encrypted audio files of my briefing to Mark's field team. My voice, calm and clear as I outlined the exact ambush scenario they were about to face. I attached the original unredacted SIGINT data, the raw intelligence that proved my conclusion wasn't a guess, but a certainty. I bypassed the normal chain of command, knowing General Thompson's influence was a poison in that well. Instead, I submitted the entire encrypted package directly to the JAG Corps liaison for the High-Level Awards Board, the one body with the authority to rewrite the official record. The final piece was the most delicate. I requested a formal meeting with Colonel Rostova. In her office, I kept my explanation brief and professional. "Ma'am, for archival purposes," I said, my voice steady. "I've forwarded my complete, unredacted mission log from Operation Nightfall to the Awards Board archives." I watched her face carefully. A slight, knowing nod was my only reply. "I'll ensure the board has the proper context for your archival submission, Captain," she said, the slight pause speaking volumes. A complete record is vital for history. I knew then that she wouldn't just forward the file, she would personally walk it to the board's chairman. It would not get lost. It would not be ignored. The trap was set. They thought the ceremony was a coronation for their son. They'd sent out invitations, planned a celebration, and polished a medal. They had no idea they were about to attend a court-martial of their own narrative. The day of the ceremony arrived, a crisp autumn morning. I walked into the grand auditorium at Fort Meade, a place so steeped in protocol you could almost feel the weight of it in the air. The room was a sea of perfectly pressed Class A uniforms, a testament to order, tradition, and a chain of command I was about to shatter. From my position at the back, I had a perfect view of the front row, where the Thompson family was seated like royalty awaiting a coronation. General Thompson looked regal, his chest puffed out with pride, while Mark beside him wore a look of smug satisfaction. I stood there, a silent observer in my own story, my uniform crisp, my expression a carefully constructed mask of neutrality. I was no longer a ghost. I was a time bomb, ticking silently in the corner of their perfect world. The ceremony began, moving with the predictable, ponderous rhythm of all military events. Finally, the four-star general took the stage to present the commendations for Operation Nightfall. He began with Mark's citation, reading from the sanitized, streamlined narrative his father had so carefully crafted. He spoke of Mark's courage, his leadership, his decisiveness in the field. I listened to the polite applause that followed, watching Mark stand to give a small, humble nod to the crowd. It was a masterful performance. He looked every bit the hero they wanted him to be. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a profound, cold sense of anticipation. The general cleared his throat, and the applause died down. He paused, his expression shifting from one of ceremonial duty to something far more serious. "However," he announced, the single word dropping into the silence like a stone. A confused murmur rippled through the audience. "A full review of the operational data has revealed that the mission's critical intelligence, the factor that averted catastrophic failure, was misattributed in initial reports. I watched General Thompson's smile falter, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Mark's posture stiffened. The air in the room grew thick and heavy. This was it. The moment the official story began to crumble. The four-star general's voice was now sharp, authoritative, and utterly devoid of sentiment. The board has posthumously awarded medals to the 2 soldiers who were lost because the initial command advice was ignored, he said, a quiet condemnation that hung in the air. Then he continued, his eyes scanning the room. And it has issued a formal commendation to the officer whose analysis ultimately saved the rest of the unit. The strategist who identified the decoy, pinpointed the ambush, and fed real-time intelligence to the field team against protocol was operating under the call sign Oracle. I saw it then. The flash of pure, unadulterated shock on General Thompson's face. Oracle. It was a legendary call sign within the intelligence community, a name associated with a ghost-like analyst whose work was the stuff of whispers and awe, a name he had surely heard, but never, in his wildest dreams, associated with me. The general's gaze settled on me, a spotlight in the vast, silent room. The official record is now corrected, he declared, his voice ringing with finality. Will Captain Lena Petrova please come to the stage? Absolute silence. 1,000 heads turned as one, a wave of shock and disbelief washing over the auditorium. I saw Mark's face, pale and slack-jawed, a statue of public humiliation. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, I took a single, deliberate step forward. My footsteps echoed on the polished floor, each one a hammer blow against their carefully constructed lies. All eyes were on me as I began the long walk from the back of the room. I didn't rush. I let them watch. I let them see the woman they had tried to erase. As I approached the front row, a strange thing happened. General Thompson, a man conditioned by decades of military protocol, a man for whom rank was everything, moved without thinking. He lurched to his feet, his back ramrod straight, his hands instinctively cupped at his sides. He was standing at attention for me. My father-in-law had spent a lifetime demanding respect based on his rank. It turned out, all he needed was to finally be shown mine. I accepted the commendation from the 4-star general with a simple, dignified, "Thank you, sir." My voice was steady, my hands were still. I didn't look at the Thompsons. I didn't need to. I could feel the weight of their humiliation from across the stage. After the ceremony, the room seemed to part around them. They became an island in a sea of uniforms, colleagues and friends, suddenly finding urgent business elsewhere. Mark, the celebrated hero of the hour, now stood alone, his father's protective bluster finally silenced. I watched them leave through a side exit, not with a triumphant fanfare, but with the quiet, ignominious shuffle of people who had been exposed. They weren't just defeated, they were irrelevant. My own experience was the mirror opposite. I was approached, not by one, but by a dozen senior officers. Colonel Rostova was the first to reach me, her handshake firm, her eyes filled with a deep, knowing respect. "That took more than just intelligence, Captain," she said, her voice low. "That took courage." The 4-star general himself came over, congratulating me not just on the award, but on my commitment to the integrity of the service record. These people, my true peers, weren't just acknowledging my work, they were acknowledging my character. For the first time I felt like I was standing in a family, one founded on merit and mutual respect, not on dysfunctional obligation and a fragile inherited name. 1 year later, the name on the door read, Major Petrova. I stood at the head of a massive holographic map table, briefing a team of elite intelligence officers for a new, high-stakes mission. I had been given command of the very department I once served in, head of strategic threat analysis. The room was the same skiff where I had silently saved Mark's team, but now it was my domain. The air was different. It was charged with purpose, with the quiet confidence of a team that trusted its leader implicitly. My team. They were the best in the business, and they hung on my every word, their respect earned not through rank or reputation, but through countless hours spent working alongside me in the digital trenches. This was my new family. We didn't have Sunday dinners or exchange hollow pleasantries. Instead, we shared a bond forged in the crucible of high-pressure situations. A trust built on competence and a shared commitment to the mission. There were no false narratives here. No need to make myself smaller to protect someone else's ego. My success was their success, and theirs was mine. We were a unit, a cohesive whole, and in that sterile, windowless room I had found a sense of belonging that the Thompsons' grand, polished world could never offer me. I had finally found my place, a place where my skills were not just valued, but essential. In the middle of a briefing, my personal phone, which I rarely looked at during work, buzzed on the console beside me. A text from an unsaved number. My thumb hovered over the notification, a flicker of the old world intruding on the new. I opened it. The message was from Mark. It read, "They're opening an inquiry. My dad told me to call you. He said you're the only one who can help." I read the words once, then twice. There was no anger, no swell of triumphant satisfaction. I didn't feel the need to respond, to gloat, to have the last word. The years of emotional debt, the internal ledger of slights and injustices. It was finally balanced. All I felt was quiet finality. I held my thumb over the screen for a moment, then calmly tapped block contact. I placed the phone face down and turned my full attention back to the holographic map, back to my team, back to my mission, back to my life. They tried to write my legacy as a footnote in their story. I just forced them to read the primary source. If you've ever had your work stolen or your voice silenced, share your story of how you finally set the record straight below. In this community, every contribution is recognized.